The sound of chains. The night air was heavy with the smell of oil and smoke. In a small town tucked between the hills and the highway, life moved slow, but not that night. In the back corner of an abandoned gas station, flickering under a broken neon light, something dark was happening. Emma, a 19-year-old college student, was struggling against a thick rope cutting into her wrists. Her heart pounded in her chest like it was trying to break free. She had only stopped to get fuel, but her car had barely rolled to a halt before a group of bikers swarmed in like wolves. There were 5 of them, rough men with leather jackets, cold eyes, and cruel laughs. They called themselves the Blackjaws. Most people avoided them. The police looked the other way. They ruled this stretch of road. Emma's lips were trembling as she tried to speak. "Please," she whispered. "I don't have money. Just let me go." One of the bikers laughed, a low, guttural sound. He walked up to her, crouched down, and tilted her chin with 2 fingers. "You think this is about money?" he said, grinning. "We're just having fun." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't scream. She'd read stories of people surviving worse. If she panicked now, they'd win. What no one knew was that just a few feet away, sitting in the shadow of the trees by the road, was a man. A quiet man. A traveler, dressed in worn jeans and a black hoodie. He had pulled over because his motorcycle had a slight issue. A small one he could fix in 10 minutes. That man was Keanu Reeves. He didn't want attention. He never did. He'd ridden through dozens of towns in the last few weeks trying to clear his mind. Life had grown loud. Fame, loss, fake friends, and hollow handshakes. The silence of the open road gave him something he couldn't find in Hollywood. As he crouched near his bike, tightening a screw near the brake, he heard the noise. Not loud at first. Just a muffled cry. Then a louder one. Then a laugh that chilled the blood. He stood up. He saw the flicker of movement behind the gas station. 5 figures, one of them smaller, tied. His face went still. Keanu wasn't a man who rushed into fights. Not anymore. But he also wasn't a man who turned his back when someone needed help. He stepped onto the gravel. His boots made no sound. His eyes scanned the scene. His breath stayed steady. He knew what he had to do. Behind the gas station, the Blackjaws were growing bolder. One of them lit a cigarette and waved the fire near Emma's face. She flinched. "You scared, sweetheart?" he said. She didn't answer. The leader, a man with a thick scar running across his cheek, barked, "Hold her steady." That was when it happened. A loud crash echoed through the lot as something heavy hit the side of a rusty metal barrel. The bikers froze. "What was that?" one of them asked. They turned toward the sound. Nothing, just shadows. Then another noise. Footsteps. Slow, firm, deliberate. And then he stepped into the light. Keanu Reeves. They didn't recognize him right away. Not in the dim light. Not in that hoodie. He looked calm. Almost too calm. "Let her go," Keanu said, his voice low. The scar-faced leader laughed. "And who the hell are you?" Keanu didn't move. His eyes, dark and steady, locked onto the girl first. Then the ropes. Then the men. Someone who's giving you one chance to walk away. The tension broke like glass. One of the bikers lunged forward. Keanu sidestepped with the grace of someone who'd done this before. Not in movies, but in real life. The biker crashed into a metal pole and groaned. Another came with a chain. Keanu ducked, grabbed the man's wrist, twisted it, and the chain fell with a clatter. By now the others realized this wasn't an ordinary man. Scarface growled, pulling out a knife. "You're dead," he shouted. Keanu didn't answer. He moved. In 5 seconds, it was over. The last man hit the ground with a dull thud. No blood. No kill shots. Just precise moves that left them groaning and gasping. Keanu walked over to Emma. She was breathing fast, but her eyes locked onto his. She didn't know who he was yet, but something in his presence told her she was safe now. He knelt beside her. "You're okay," he said gently. "I'm going to untie you." Her voice shook. Who are you?" He smiled a little. Just someone who couldn't walk away. As he untied her hands, sirens wailed in the distance. Someone must have heard the noise. Keanu stood. He walked away without another word. Emma watched him go, too shocked to even say thank you. By the time the police arrived, he was gone, just a man on a bike, riding into the dark, silent night. But that night, Emma would never forget. The man who saved her wasn't a superhero. He wasn't a cop. He was Keanu Reeves, and she would find out the truth soon enough. Whispers in the diner the next morning. The sun rose slow and gentle over the hills, painting the sky with soft orange and gold. The town of Haddon Creek looked peaceful again. Quiet streets, old buildings, a dog barking somewhere in the distance. But not everything was calm beneath the surface. At the small-town diner on Maple Street, the regulars were already gathered. Truckers with coffee-stained hands, farmers with dusty boots. A waitress named Claire who'd worked there since her teens, balancing plates with a smile. The news hadn't reached the papers yet, but the whispers had already begun. Emma sat. At the corner booth, her fingers wrapped around a warm mug of tea. She hadn't gone home. After the police questioned her for hours, offering sympathy and promises, she had asked to be dropped at the diner. She didn't want to be alone. She needed people. Warmth. Light. But more than anything, she needed answers. She stared out the window, watching the breeze move the leaves. Then the bell above the door rang, soft and sharp. Heads turned. Conversations paused. He walked in like a quiet storm. Keanu Reeves. He wore the same black hoodie, the same calm expression. He carried no weapons, no pride, just a small nod to the waitress before walking to the farthest stool at the counter. He didn't look at Emma, didn't try to stand out, but she saw him. She stood up slowly. Every step toward him felt heavier than the last. She reached him, her voice low but clear. It was you. Last night. That was you. Keanu looked up, eyes kind but unreadable. You all right? She nodded slowly. I don't even know how to thank you. No need, he said. Emma sat beside him, shoulders tense. She lowered her voice. Who are you? He took a sip of his coffee before answering. Someone just passing through. But why stop? She asked. Why help me? You could have just ridden on. He looked down, his hands wrapped around the mug. Because I've seen what happens when no one helps. For a moment, silence settled between them. Emma glanced around the diner. A few people stared. Most whispered. Do you know? She said softly. People are calling you a ghost hero? Keanu chuckled under his breath. That's new. Claire, the waitress, came over. She placed a plate of eggs in front of him and smiled warmly. It's on the house, she said. Word travels fast. He offered a small nod. Thanks. Emma leaned in, her voice trembling just a little. They arrested the bikers. The police said they were wanted for months. You stopped something terrible. Keanu's face grew serious. No one should go through that, not you, not anyone. Then he added, almost to himself, but this town, it's not done yet. Emma frowned. What do you mean? He looked at her. Sometimes people like that. They're just the tip of the iceberg. Meanwhile, in a warehouse just outside town, another scene was unfolding. Two men sat at a long metal table. Both looked dangerous, but one was worse. His name was Colt McKenzie, leader of the larger biker syndicate the Black Jaws belonged to. He was older, built like a bear, and spoke with a deep southern drawl. 5 of my men, he growled, slamming a fist on the table. 5. Knocked out like children. The younger man beside him whispered. They said it was just one guy. One man. Colt lit a cigarette, eyes narrow. One man doesn't do that unless he's trained. We're not dealing with some drunk. He paused, thinking. We're dealing with someone who knows pain. He crushed the cigarette under his boot. Find out who he is. Find out now. Back at the diner, Emma reached into her bag. She pulled out a newspaper clipping, slightly crumpled. It showed a photo of Keanu from a few years ago, smiling, on a red carpet. "You're him, aren't you?" she whispered. "Keanu Reeves." Keanu didn't answer right away. Then he gave a small, tired smile. "Used to be." "Why here?" she asked. "Why disappear?" He looked out the window. "Because out here, I can breathe. I can help. I'm not a headline. I'm just a man." Emma's hands shook as she placed the clipping back in her bag. "I want to help too." Keanu turned to her surprised. "Emma, they hurt me," she said, voice breaking. "They took something from me. But I'm not going to be afraid, not anymore." He studied her for a long moment. There was pain in her eyes, but also something else. Fire. Then the door of the diner opened again. Two men in dark jackets stepped in. They didn't look like locals. One scanned the room. The other walked toward the counter, pretending to glance at the menu. Keanu noticed them immediately. His posture changed. Not tense, but ready. Emma felt it too. "Do you know them?" "Not yet," he whispered. Claire came by again, placing a bill on the counter. "Take your time, but just a heads up, those guys didn't order anything. Been watching you." Keanu smiled at her. "Thanks, Claire." Then he stood up. The men in the dark jackets stiffened. Emma stood too. "What now?" Keanu didn't look back. "Now we find out if they're here for breakfast, or for something worse." He stepped outside, sunlight falling over his shoulders. Emma followed, her heart pounding. Behind them, the whispers in the diner grew louder, and far away, Colt McKenzie picked up a phone and growled 2 words into it. "Find him." The man with no past. The wind had picked up outside the diner. Dust rolled across the pavement like whispers. The 2 strangers in dark jackets followed, Keanu and Emma into the sunlight, but they moved carefully, like men trained not to be noticed yet never fully invisible. Keanu stopped near his bike, resting one hand lightly on the seat. His eyes flicked back, sharp and silent. Emma stood just behind him, her fingers curling into fists without realizing it. "You looking for something?" Keanu asked, calm but clear. The taller man stepped forward, pulling out a folded photo from his jacket. He held it up. It was grainy, taken from a gas station camera, the night Keanu had fought the Black Jaws. "You were there," the man said. "You saved that girl." Emma stepped forward. "His name is Keanu. And if you're here to threaten him," Keanu gently raised a hand to stop her. His voice stayed quiet. "Who are you with?" The man gave a tight nod. "Not enemies, not cops either. Name's Darian. We've been tracking the Black Jaws for over a year, but what you did that night, it blew the doors open. They were part of something bigger. You exposed it." The second man, stockier and younger, finally spoke. "Colt McKenzie isn't just a gang leader. He runs weapons, girls, drugs, even small-town sheriffs answer to him." Emma's face paled. "But the police said, they said what they could," Darian interrupted. "But in this town, even truth needs permission." Keanu nodded slowly. "And now Colt knows someone disrupted his chain." Darian tucked the photo back into his coat. "We're here because he's sending more than whispers now. That girl you saved? He wants her silenced." Emma stepped back, her mouth going dry. "Me?" Keanu's jaw clenched, then he turned to her. "You'll be safe." Darian glanced between them. "If you stay here, they'll come. If you run, they'll follow. So whatever you decide, make it fast." They walked off without another word, disappearing down the street like fog fading in the heat. Keanu stared at the horizon, his mind racing. He hadn't planned to stay in Haddon Creek. It was just a stop. A brief pause in a long road trip of silence and escape. But now the silence was gone, and a girl's life hung in the balance. Emma sat on the bench near his bike. "Why did they pick me? It could have been anyone." Keanu sat beside her. "Because people like Colt think no one will fight back." She looked at him, searching his face. "But you did. Why?" He took a long breath. "Because once, Someone didn't. His voice had softened. She waited. He didn't go on. Instead, he stood up, grabbing a small leather bag from his bike. Come on, there's someone we need to see. They rode for 20 minutes, winding through narrow roads that led up to a quiet ranch house on a hill. The house was small, old but well kept. Chickens pecked in the yard. A wind chime danced on the porch. An older man opened the door before they even knocked. He had gray hair, kind eyes, and a limp that told stories without words. I heard you, rattled Colt's cage, the man said. Was wondering how long it'd take before you came back. Keanu smiled faintly. Hello, Jonas. Emma looked between them. You two know each other? Jonas stepped aside, waving them in. Used to be in the same shadows, before he traded them for the road. They sat around a kitchen table with mugs of coffee. Jonas pulled out a map, placing pins across several towns. Red for trouble, blue for safe houses, yellow for unknowns. Colt's got eyes here, Jonas said, pointing to Haddon Creek. And here, and here. Keanu pointed to a small cabin in the hills. This one still safe? Jonas nodded. For now. Keanu turned to Emma. We'll take you there tonight. Lay low while we figure out what Colt's next move is. She shook her head. I don't want to hide. It's not hiding, he said. It's preparing. Emma looked down. They tied me up like I was nothing. They laughed while I cried. I want to fight, but I don't know how. Keanu leaned closer. You don't need to fight like me. You just need to survive. Live. Speak the truth. That's how they lose. Later that night, under a sky full of stars, they rode in silence to the cabin. Keanu's bike cut through the night like a whisper, Emma holding on tight behind him. Her fear had not vanished, but beside him it felt smaller. They arrived at the cabin lit only by a small lamp inside. Keanu checked the perimeter while Emma stepped into the quiet wooden room. It smelled like pine and safety. You'll be safe here, Keanu said as he locked the door. I'll stay nearby. If anyone comes, I'll know. Emma looked at him. Why do you care so much? He paused, then said softly, Because I know what it's like to lose someone, and wish I had gotten there 1 minute sooner. Emma whispered, Who did you lose? Keanu didn't answer. He simply turned away, stepping out onto the porch, the moonlight casting long shadows across the trees. But deep in the woods, hidden from view, headlights blinked once. A dark car. A satellite phone. A voice whispering, We found her. Colt Mackenzie was coming, and he wasn't coming alone. The cabin in the woods, the forest was quiet. Too quiet. Not even the usual chirping of insects or rustle of small animals stirred under the dark canopy of trees. It was the kind of silence that felt heavy, like the earth itself was holding its breath. Keanu stood just outside the cabin, his silhouette barely visible in the moonlight. He hadn't slept. His back leaned against the wooden pillar of the porch, arms crossed, eyes scanning the tree line like a wolf watching its territory. Inside, Emma was curled up on a small cot, wrapped in a wool blanket. The cabin was simple. Just one room, a wood stove, a table, and a tiny kitchen corner. Jonas had stocked it with supplies, canned food, a radio, and an old revolver that hadn't been used in years. Emma stared at the ceiling. She hadn't slept either. Her thoughts looped endlessly. The rope, the fear, the cruel laughter, and Keanu's voice saying, You'll be safe here. She had believed him, still did, but something in the air tonight felt wrong. Just then, the porch creaked. Keanu stepped inside. Can't sleep? He asked gently. Emma shook her head. I keep thinking they'll come. They will, he said simply. She looked at him, alarmed. What? Keanu walked to the table, lighting the old lantern. Its glow warmed the room but also made the shadows dance. They've been tracking you, or me, or both. Colt doesn't let things go. He sends a message before he shows up. And we haven't seen that message yet. Emma's voice trembled. Then why are we here? Waiting? Keanu knelt beside the stove, loading it with dry wood. Because sometimes, the only way to stop the fire is to let it come to you. Before she could ask more, the radio on the table crackled. "Base to Ryder, come in." Keanu walked over and pressed the button. "I'm here." It was Jonas. "They're moving. Just spotted 3 bikes and a van heading your direction through the back logging road. They'll be there before dawn." Emma stood, her heart thumping. "How many?" Jonas's voice crackled again. "Maybe 7, 8. At least 2 armed. This isn't just a scare tactic, this is a hit." Keanu looked at Emma. "Go to the back room, stay down, don't make a sound." She hesitated. "But, do it," he said gently but firmly. She nodded and slipped into the small back room, heart racing. Keanu opened the bag he'd brought. Inside was more than tools. A flashlight, rope, old gloves, smoke pellets, and a metal case. When he clicked it open, it revealed a compact handgun. Clean. Precise. He checked it. Loaded. Just in case. Outside, the wind picked up again. The trees whispered warnings in their language of leaves. Then for you a crack of twigs. He moved fast, extinguishing the lantern. The cabin went dark. Emma sat in the back room, holding her breath. She could hear her own heartbeat. It was so loud it felt like someone could hear it from outside. Outside, Keanu moved like a shadow disappearing into the forest. He didn't need light. His body remembered how to move quiet, how to listen, how to wait. 2 bikers crept up the path toward the cabin. One held a shotgun. The other had a hunting knife tucked into his belt. They were cocky, slow, assuming this was just another scared girl and some unlucky stranger. From behind a tree, Keanu watched. Then he moved. A stone flew from his hand, hitting the metal can by the shed. The noise sent the bikers spinning toward. Did you hear that? Probably a raccoon, but they stepped toward it anyway. Keanu slipped behind them, silent as fog. In 5 seconds, one was disarmed and on the ground. The other turned just in time to get a sharp blow to the ribs that knocked the wind out of him. Keanu took their weapons, hid them under the brush, and melted back into the dark. But more were coming. From the woods, 3 more figures appeared. One carried a flashlight, another had a rifle. They moved faster, more alert. They didn't speak, just hand signals and cold eyes. Colt's men were trained. Inside the cabin, Emma heard footsteps outside. She grabbed the revolver Jonas had left and crouched beside the bed. Her hands shook so badly she had to grip the handle with both palms. Then, glass shattered. A smoke pellet rolled into the cabin from the broken window. She coughed, eyes stinging. The room filled with fog. A shadow stepped through the door. She aimed the gun with trembling arms. The figure spoke low and cruel. "You've got nowhere to go, sweetheart." But then, a flash of movement. Keanu burst through the other side of the cabin, tackling the man to the floor. The gun flew from his hand. They fought in the smoke, fists landing hard, knocking into furniture, cracking the edge of the table. Emma crawled for the revolver. As Keanu struggled with the attacker, another figure appeared in the doorway. Rifle raised, Emma screamed. But Keanu turned just in time, grabbed the edge of the broken chair leg and threw it like a dart. It hit the man's hand. The rifle fell. Keanu lunged, disarmed him, and knocked him unconscious in one brutal move. They both stood there, panting, the room a mess of smoke and broken wood. Outside, engines roared. Emma gasped. "More are coming." Keanu looked out the window. Lights were closing in. "We can't hold the cabin," he said. "Time to move." He grabbed the map from his bag and pointed to a river on the edge of the forest. "We go through the old hunting trail. It's narrow. They can't chase us. They're on bikes." They ran into the woods just as more bikers swarmed the cabin, shouting orders, weapons drawn. Keanu and Emma moved like hunted ghosts, slipping through the brush, breathing through fear. As they reached the top of the hill, Emma stopped. Below, the cabin was burning. Smoke rose into the night sky like a warning. She whispered, "They were going to kill me." Keanu looked at her, sweat on his brow, voice steady. But they didn't. She looked up at him, Why do you keep saving me? He looked away. Because I didn't save my sister. Emma's breath caught. Keanu spoke, voice low and rough. Years ago, she was in the wrong place, wrong time, and I was too late. I told myself it wasn't my fault. But every time I see someone hurt, I hear her voice. Emma reached for his hand. Then let's make sure you never hear it again. They stood on the hill, breathing hard, their bond forged through fire and fear. But far below them, in a black SUV parked beyond the tree line, Colt Mackenzie lit a cigar and smiled as he watched the cabin burn. Let them run, he muttered. I want to see how far. The fire inside, the sun hadn't risen yet, but the sky was beginning to turn gray. Smoke still trailed behind them from the distant cabin, curling into the early morning mist like a scar across the sky. Keanu and Emma moved through the dense woods, their steps quiet but fast. Emma's legs ached, her lungs burned, but she didn't say a word. Not because she wasn't scared, but because she refused to be the girl who cried anymore. She had spent a night tied to a chair. She had stared down death. And now, she was still standing. Keanu led the way, focused and steady. He moved like someone who knew the land, like every tree had whispered to him before they got there. He knew where to place his foot to avoid dry branches. He knew where the birds were supposed to sing, and, when they didn't, he paused. After nearly an hour of silent movement, they reached a clearing near the river. An old shed stood hidden behind a thick wall of vines. The wood was worn and half collapsed, but the inside was dry and hidden. Keanu pushed the door open. We'll rest here. Not long. Emma slumped against the wall, sliding down until she sat on the floor. How do you know all these places? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he dropped his backpack and pulled out a small bottle of water, handing it to her. She drank, then asked again. How do you know all this? He finally spoke. Because I used to be like them. Her breath caught. What do you mean? Keanu sat across from her, elbows on his knees. Not in a gang, but in a place where violence was normal. When I was young, I lost people, got angry, didn't care what happened to me. I trained, traveled, fought, became good at things that only made me feel worse. He looked away. Then, one day someone asked me, "What are you building with all that pain?" And I didn't have an answer. Emma watched him quietly. He went on. So I left everything. I started riding, town to town. If someone needed help, I stopped. If not, I moved on. She nodded slowly. And then you found me. Keanu looked at her. Emma, I didn't save you. You survived. She blinked, caught off guard. But you stayed calm. You didn't give up. That takes more strength than most people ever find. Outside, a twig snapped. Both of them froze. Keanu grabbed the revolver and crept to the doorway. He peered out. Nothing. Then another sound. A crunch. This time closer. Emma moved quietly to the far corner, holding her breath. A figure appeared, between the trees. Keanu raised the gun, ready. But then the figure stepped into the light. Jonas. Keanu lowered the weapon. You shouldn't be here. Jonas was out of breath. They're blocking the main roads, they're sweeping the river, they want her bad. Emma stepped forward. Why? What does Colt want with me? I'm not important. Jonas looked at her, eyes kind but serious. You are now. You spoke. You lived. You can name names. And worst of all, you made him look weak. Keanu asked, how much time do we have? Jonas hesitated. Hours. Maybe less. Keanu paced the small room, thinking. We can't outrun them forever. Jonas looked at him. Then don't. Emma's eyes widened. What? Jonas spoke clearly. Let's end this. You've already shaken the foundation. Now finish it. Bring him into the light. Record him. Expose him. Let the world see who he really is. Keanu stared at Jonas. And how do you suggest we do that? Jonas pulled out a small device from his pocket. This is wired directly to a satellite feed. We plant it on Emma. We draw Colt in. He thinks he's winning. Meanwhile, the whole thing gets streamed to every law agency that's been trying to catch him for years. Emma's voice was quiet. You want to use me as bait. Jonas looked at her. Not bait. A witness. A fire they can't put out. She looked at Keanu. Do you think it'll work? Keanu's eyes met hers. Yes, but only if you're sure. Emma stood straighter. I'm sure. That night, they returned to town, quietly, carefully, through back paths and shadows. While Colt's men searched the hills, Keanu, Jonas, and Emma slipped through their fingers. They arrived at an abandoned construction yard on the edge of Haddon Creek. Rusted machines, broken walls, piles of concrete blocks. Perfect for an ambush, perfect for a trap. Jonas set up the cameras and satellite transmitter. Keanu checked every possible angle. Escape routes, weak points, hiding spots. Emma stood in the middle of the open space. Her heart thundered in her chest. Keanu walked over to her. You still okay? She nodded. Scared, but ready. He looked at her. You don't have to be fearless. You just have to stay standing. An hour passed. Then 2. Then the roar of engines echoed through the lot. Emma's hands clenched. A black SUV rolled in slowly. Behind it, 6 bikes circled like sharks. The vehicles stopped. The engines died. Colt McKenzie stepped out. He was even, larger in person, thick beard, eyes like ice, scars down both arms. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Well, he said. You've been busy. Emma stood tall. So have you. He chuckled. You cost me men, money, pride. That's a debt. She didn't blink. Then collect it. He walked toward her, hands behind his back. You think you're safe because of that man? He's just another ghost. They all fade. Emma spoke loudly. The world's watching you, Colt. He paused. What? Jonas, hidden on a rooftop, gave the signal. The satellite went live. The audio was clean. Clear. Emma said, You trafficked girls. You killed men. You bought off cops. How many people have to bleed before someone stops you? Colt's eyes narrowed. You little... He reached for her, but Keanu stepped between them. Colt froze. Keanu's voice was ice. Touch her, and I'll finish what I started. One of the bikers behind Colt raised a gun. Too slow. Keanu disarmed him and had him on the ground in seconds. The others backed up. Sirens wailed in. The distance. The feed had worked. Law enforcement. Federal agents. Even the state governor's office had received it. Within minutes, the lot filled with lights. Shouting. Armed men. Colt's empire. Shattered. Emma stood there, not moving, not running. Keanu walked to her side. You did it, he said. She looked at him, tears in her eyes. We did it. In the chaos, as Colt was dragged away in cuffs, Emma looked at Keanu. What now? He smiled gently. Now we breathe. But neither of them saw the man in the shadows behind the fence, watching, not running, waiting. The last Rider morning broke through the broken concrete yard like a promise. Red and gold spilled across the sky, soft and warm, as if the sun itself was trying to erase the darkness of the night before. Sirens had faded. Agents were gone. The lot stood silent now, but the echoes of what happened still hung in the air. Emma sat on a steel beam near the edge of the yard. The jacket she wore was too big, but it smelled like hope and oil and pine. It was Keanu's. He had placed it over her shoulders after the arrest. Now she held it tight, her eyes watching the dust rise in slow curls from the broken ground. Colt McKenzie was gone. In handcuffs, his men scattered, his empire crumbling. But Emma didn't feel victory. Not yet. Not fully. She looked over at Keanu, who was quietly loading his bike. His hands moved with care, but his eyes kept drifting to the edge of the fence. Something in his gut felt wrong. Jonas approached, a bandage on his arm from a graze during the takedown. "You sure you're not staying in town a little longer?" Keanu shook his head. "I don't stay," Jonas sighed. "Still running?" Keanu looked at him, still searching. Jonas nodded, then glanced toward Emma. "She's stronger now." Keanu followed his gaze. She always was. Just then, Emma stood and walked toward them. "You're leaving." Keanu didn't deny it. "You're safe. Now, your story changed everything." She shook her head. "It's not over." He raised an eyebrow. Emma glanced around the empty lot. "There's one more." Keanu turned fully toward her. "What do you mean?" "One of the bikers never showed during the arrest," she said. "He was quiet, different. Colt called him Silas, said he was his blade in the dark." Jonas frowned. "I've heard that name. He's the one they send when they don't want survivors." Keanu's voice dropped. "You're sure?" Emma nodded. "He was watching from the shadows last night. I felt it." Jonas looked at Keanu. "You think he'll come back?" Keanu nodded slowly. "Yes, not for the gang, not for Colt, for revenge." The three of them stood silent for a moment. Then Keanu said, "I'm not leaving." They returned to town, this time in daylight. Everything looked different. The diner was open. The local paper had printed a special early edition. Front page, "Girl exposes crime ring, town hero helps take down bikers." Emma's picture was there. So was a blurry image of Keanu. Not many knew it was really him. The paper called him the stranger who stayed. They set up in the sheriff's office, which had been emptied for a full security sweep. Emma stayed in the back room. Keanu waited in the front. Jonas wired a motion alert system on the outer windows. Hours passed nothing. Then, the lights flickered once. A shadow slipped across the far window. Keanu stood. He motioned to Jonas, who checked the cameras. "Back entrance, moving low." Emma stepped out. "Is it him?" Keanu looked at her. "Go back and lock the door," but Emma stayed. "No more running." The back door creaked. Keanu turned toward it, calm, focused. Then Silas stepped inside. He was tall, quiet, dressed in gray. No gang jacket. Just black gloves and a knife sheathed at his side. His face was scarred, not like Colt's, which showed pride. These scars looked earned, cold, empty. "You cost me everything," Silas said, voice dry as ash. Keanu didn't blink. "You had nothing to begin with." "She's supposed to be gone," Silas said, eyes shifting to Emma. They said make it clean. Keanu stepped between them. "You'll go through me." Silas smiled. "Good." Then he moved. The fight wasn't like in the movies. It was brutal, fast, no wasted motion, just skill and survival. Silas swung the knife, fast and wide. Keanu dodged, slammed his elbow into Silas's shoulder and kicked the weapon away. They crashed into desks, chairs, and finally into the metal lockers on the side. Emma stood frozen, until Silas shoved Keanu back and grabbed her arm. She screamed. But before Silas could move further, Keanu grabbed the metal pole from the floor and struck Silas across the ribs. The man went down, gasping. Keanu pinned him to the floor. "You're finished," Keanu said. Silas coughed, laughing. "You don't get it? There's always another one." Emma stepped forward, voice strong. "Not if we stop it here." Silas stared at her, not afraid, but empty. Then he went still. Keanu cuffed him with zip ties. Police arrived minutes later. Jonas had triggered the emergency beacon during the fight. Emma and Keanu stood outside as the cruiser took Silas away. The town watched from porches, windows, shops. Whispers turned into quiet respect. Someone began clapping. Just one person. Then, another. Soon the whole street was applauding. Keanu looked surprised. Emma smiled. "You stayed." He looked at her. "You made me." Later, as the sun dipped below the trees, Keanu stood beside his bike again. Emma walked up. "You're leaving. For real this time. You've got this town now," he said. "You don't need me anymore." She looked at him. "But what if I do?" He paused, then smiled. "You'll know where to find me." She handed him something, a small photo. It was of them at the diner, taken earlier that day. She had written on the back, "Thank you for staying when no one else did." He put it in his jacket, then he kicked the bike to life. As the engine rumbled, he said, "Ride on, Emma. Don't stop." She nodded, tears in her eyes. He rode off. Not into darkness this time, but into the light. The town stood stronger. Emma stood taller, and somewhere, on another road, another quiet man would stop for a stranger in need. Because that's what Keanu Reeves did.